Hi, so today I will be presenting tourism and how it's been affected by COVID. The world tourism industry is facing the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. Lockdowns at the largest scale in human history were imposed in all corners of the world. Also, tourism is a critical sector of the economy because it provided about 29% of the world's services export and about 300 million jobs globally. Tourism-dependent countries are more likely to face negative complications for a much longer time. Therefore, the World Tourism Organization has launched a new dashboard on COVID-19 on tourism across the world. In this presentation, we will discuss such impacts, pre- and post-COVID situations, data, and analysis. COVID effects on economy. The COVID pandemic had negative and detrimental impacts on the international tourism industry as a whole. It had a direct impact in creating job losses, where the expected direct tourism industry-based jobs had 100 to 120 jobs at risk. This would hurt the livelihoods of many hardworking and impact the global economy due to the lack of stimulating economic activities in the short term. An expected loss of 1.5% to 2.8% of the global GDP will affect revenue streams, as the value of products and services was inadequate to meet the demand necessary due to a lack of supply. Most places in the tourism sector were on the verge of closing as people weren't interested in traveling or going places. The international traveler spending was decreased by 910 billion to 1.2 trillion in USD, a major loss in profits. Negative impacts all over the world. Since governments across the globe have a responsibility to prioritize public health while also preserving employment in companies in the face of the epidemic, the tourist sector has been severely impacted, putting the lives of people at danger due to the epidemic economic impact. Negative effects all over the world. Since governments across the globe have a responsibility to prioritize public health while also preserving employment and companies in the face of the epidemic, the tourist sector has been severely impacted, putting the lives of people at danger due to the economic impact. According to the UNWTO, global tourism will decline, reaching levels similar to those seen 30 years ago, with 1 billion fewer arrivals and an average revenue loss of 1.1 billion USD dollars. This collapse would result in a 2 trillion USD dollar drop in global GDP, having a direct negative impact on nations' socioeconomic development. Measures to confront the virus have had a significant impact on the sector, which are unlikely to return to normal anytime soon. Even once the emergency measures are gradually lifted, enterprises that have weathered the storm will confront challenges during the protracted recovery period. Many organizations have stopped recruiting, which might hinder their capacity to fill vacancies following the crisis. Airlines and tourism companies throughout the world are altering their workforce, while many have paused any hiring process whatsoever. Other businesses have lifted their employees on temporary layoffs or are working with labor unions to develop measures that frequently involve a decrease in working hours in order to avert layoffs. All this means that the tourism industry has been one of the most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that even after the said crisis is gone, the industry will continue to struggle to go back to normal. Positive impacts on world tourism. COVID-19 has not only affected tourism in negative ways, but there are also some positive effects of it on various countries. Because of lockdown, people could not travel. But for some refreshment and spending some good time, people chose to travel in domestic areas and domestic destinations, saw a huge rise in tourist flow. Similarly, it also promoted use of more organic products and brought a huge change in eating behaviors of visitors. Not only limited to visitors, COVID-19 gave a chance to natural biodiversities to accelerate their senses. Because of the travel ban, lives of many wild animals saved as they were not imported or exported during this time period. Data and statistics. If the COVID-19 pandemic is controlled, Canadian travel and tourist expenditure is expected to fall from 105 billion Canadian dollars in 2019 to 68 billion US dollars in 2020. A further 42 billion Canadian dollars might be lost if the virus spreads unchecked. Tourism expenditure in Canada is expected to exceed 103 billion Canadian dollars by 2023, regardless of whether or not the virus is contained. COVID-19, a job loss from lost tourism in Canada by If the COVID-19 is controlled in 2020, Canada is expected to lose up to 263,000 jobs as a consequence of a decrease in tourist expenditure. 450,000 jobs are expected to be at loss if the virus is not controlled. In the event that the virus is not controlled by 2023, the source anticipated that the number of tourism-related employment in Canada will decrease by 14,000. The COVID-19 pandemic had a devastating impact on the tourist sector in 2020, with several countries implementing emergency measures that caused significant disruption to the international travel. In response, it is anticipated that the U.S. would see a loss of around $147 billion in tourist earnings between January and October of this year, 2020. Meanwhile, Spain had the second largest decline in tourist income, reporting a loss of almost 46.7 billion US dollars for the period under consideration. The post-COVID future of the tourism workforce. Tourism industry will recover at different paces. Limited international tourists, good number of local buyers compared to domestic, and labor shortages as many people will be resilient to work. Conclusion. Finalizing all the data the COVID-19 pandemic has implemented change within everyone's lives across countless countries for years now. From worldwide travel restrictions to 29% of the world's services and jobs being put on lock or slowed down temporarily, limiting overall yearly incomes. The effects of COVID have left approximately 100 to 120 million jobs at risk for many hardworking people, and has left a permanent print of approximately $910 billion to $1.2 trillion in regular traveler spending, eventually hurting global GDP within the tourism industry of 1.5% to 2.8%. COVID has generally no good impacts on the world, leaving public health as the #1 priority for governments across the globe, which left many people in danger due to the economic loss and impacts. It is expected that many businesses will be left with nothing or will be severely affected within the future, while other businesses such as hotels and airlines also may not survive by an effect of the measures taken during the pandemic. Canadian travel and tourist expenditure has already fallen $37 billion in the year of 2020 and foreshadowing more possible deflects in the future. Over the years that have experienced COVID-19, many jobs were lost, and tourism revenue has gone down at a great pace. The future after the pandemic is expecting that many tourism industries will recover at different paces. There will be limits on international tourism, and labor shortages will most likely come into effect as well. Thank you so much for watching.